The massive meeting hall of the Galactic Classification Committee fell silent as Dr. Marcus Wells stepped up to the podium. His weathered face showed the strain of 3 years of research, but his eyes burned with the intensity of someone who had discovered something both wonderful and terrible. The committee members sat in their environmental chambers, each adapted to their specific biological needs. Some floated in liquid, others basked in special gases, and a few were just shifting masses of energy contained in transparent fields. All of them looked down at the human scientist with a mixture of curiosity and dismissal. "Honorable members of the committee," Dr. Wells began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I stand before you today to present evidence that will change our understanding of Class 13 Deathworlds forever." A ripple of movement passed through the assembled aliens. Class 13 worlds were the most dangerous planets known to the galaxy, places where even the air could kill most life forms. Earth was one of them. The committee head, a tall being with silvery skin that reflected light like a mirror, leaned forward. "Dr. Wells, we have already established that your homeworld's classification is correct. What possible new evidence could you have?" Wells tapped his data pad, and a hologram filled the center of the hall. It showed Earth, spinning slowly, covered in its blue oceans and green-brown continents. "We've been looking at Class 13 worlds all wrong," he said. "We thought they were obstacles to life. But they're not obstacles. They're accelerators." He switched the display to show a series of graphs and biological readings. "Look at how Earth life responds to challenges. When we face high radiation, our cells develop new protection mechanisms within days. When we encounter new toxins, our bodies adapt to process them. Even our bones get stronger in high-gravity environments." "This is known information," interrupted one of the energy beings, its voice translated through the chamber speakers. "It's why your species is considered dangerous." Wells smiled. "But here's what you don't know. These adaptations, they're getting faster. And they're not just physical anymore." He pulled up new data, showing brain scan comparisons. "Our neural plasticity is increasing. Humans are learning and adapting faster than ever before. And it's not just us. Every native Earth species is showing similar acceleration." The committee members began talking among themselves, their voices a mixture of clicks, whistles, and electronic pulses. The head raised a hand for silence. "Dr. Wells, what exactly are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that Class 13 worlds don't just allow life to exist. They actively shape it. Earth isn't just a death world. It's a forge for creating species that can survive anything." He paused, letting his words sink in. "And based on my research, there's evidence that this was done on purpose." The chamber erupted in chaos. Several members began shouting denials, while others demanded more information. The head's silvery skin rippled with concern. Wells continued, raising his voice above the noise. "Think about it. Why do all Class 13 worlds share similar patterns? Why do they all produce species with unprecedented adaptive abilities? This isn't random evolution. It's design. This is preposterous." The energy being flared brightly. "You're suggesting that someone engineered these death planets." "Not someone," Wells replied quietly. "Something. Something that knew the galaxy would need species that could adapt to anything. Something that knew regular evolution wouldn't be enough." The head stood up, its silver skin now pulsing with angry red patterns. "Dr. Wells, these are dangerous theories. They challenge the foundation of our understanding of planetary development and species evolution." Wells looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, sensors, and energy patterns of each committee member. "They should challenge us. Because if I'm right, Earth and other Class 13 worlds aren't accidents. They're preparation for something. And whatever that something is, it was important enough for someone to create entire planets as training grounds." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, the head spoke, its voice carrying a note of barely controlled fear. "This meeting is adjourned. Dr. Wells, you will submit all your research for review. Until then, you are not to share these theories with anyone." As Wells gathered his materials, he couldn't help but smile. They could try to silence him, but the truth was already out there, written in the very DNA of every Class 13 species. Something was coming, and only the inhabitants of Deathworlds would be ready for it. 3 days after his presentation to the committee, Dr. Wells sat in his cramped office at the Galactic Science Center, surrounded by holographic displays of data. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but he couldn't stop now. Not when he was so close to understanding the truth. A soft chiming sound announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal a crystalline being that sparkled under the office lights. Standing about 6 feet tall, its transparent body contained swirling patterns of blue energy. Dr. Wells, the being's translation crystal hummed. "I am Blue Shell, xenobiologist from the Crystal Collective. Your presentation intrigued me." Wells straightened in his chair, instantly alert. The Crystal Collective was known for their pure logical approach to science. "Come in," he said, clearing space among his cluttered desks. "I didn't expect anyone from the committee to contact me. I am not here officially." Blue Shell moved into the room, its crystalline form creating rainbow patterns on the walls. "The committee has classified your research, but they cannot classify the truth. I have data you need to see." Wells leaned forward. "What kind of data?" Blue Shell extended a crystalline appendage, interfacing directly with the office's computer system. New holograms sprang to life, showing 3 planets that looked remarkably similar to Earth. "These are the other Class 13 worlds," Blue Shell explained. "Each one has produced spacefaring life. Each one shows the same pattern of accelerated evolution you discovered on Earth." Wells stood up, walking through the holograms with growing excitement. "Show me the species from each world." The images changed. The first showed beings that looked like giant octopi, but with metallic skin. The second displayed creatures that seemed to be made of living smoke. The third revealed beings that appeared to be walking columns of crystal, similar to Blue Shell, but with a different internal structure. "My people," Blue Shell said, indicating the last image. "We came from the Class 13 world Crystal Prime. Like humans, we evolved in conditions that should have been impossible." Wells's mind raced with the implications. "Your people too. But that means—" "Yes," Blue Shell's crystal body pulsed with blue light. "The pattern is not unique to Earth. All Class 13 worlds are producing life forms with extraordinary adaptive capabilities. My people can restructure our crystalline matrices to survive in almost any environment. The smoke dancers can change their molecular structure at will. The metal kings can alter their atomic bonds to resist any pressure or temperature." Wells pulled up his own research, comparing it with Blue Shell's data. "Look at these timelines," he said, pointing to several graphs. "The rate of adaptation is increasing on all 4 worlds. It's like we're all approaching some kind of evolutionary threshold." "Precisely." Blue Shell moved closer to examine the data. "But there is more. We have found ancient structures on Crystal Prime, buried deep within the planet's crust. They contain markings similar to these." The hologram showed a series of complex geometric patterns. Wells felt his heart skip a beat. "I've seen those before. In Earth's oldest rock formations. We thought they were natural crystalline formations, but they are not natural." Blue Shell's voice carried an edge of excitement. "They are proof that our worlds were deliberately engineered. Someone, or something, created these planets as laboratories. They wanted to produce species that could adapt to anything." "But why?" Wells asked, though he had a growing suspicion. "That is what we need to discover," Blue Shell replied. "The committee fears this knowledge because it suggests that everything they believe about natural evolution is wrong. But I fear something else, that whatever caused our worlds to be created is still out there, waiting." Wells looked at the data swirling around them, at the proof that humanity wasn't alone in their extraordinary capabilities. "We need to continue this research," he said firmly. "Whatever's coming, we need to be ready." "Agreed." Blue Shell's crystal body glowed with determination. But we must be careful. The committee will try to stop us if they discover our collaboration. They fear what they don't understand, and they don't understand us at all. As they began organizing their combined research, Wells couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. Somewhere out in the galaxy, the force that had created the Class 13 worlds was waiting, and only the species forged in these cosmic crucibles would be ready to face it. The secret laboratory deep beneath the Galactic Science Center hummed with energy as Dr. Wells and Blue Shell conducted their most dangerous experiment yet. They had brought together 4 volunteers, a human, a crystal being, a smoke dancer, and a metal king, all connected to advanced monitoring equipment. "Are you sure about this?" Wells asked the volunteers. "What we're about to do isn't exactly approved." The Metal King, whose liquid metal skin rippled like quicksilver, spoke through the translator. "We need answers. The changes in our bodies are happening faster now." Wells nodded and turned to the monitoring station. Over the past week, they had discovered something extraordinary. The adaptive abilities of Class 13 species weren't just genetic. They could change their very cellular structure within minutes of facing a new threat. Beginning environmental simulation, Blue Shell announced, its crystal body glowing with concentrated energy. First test: extreme radiation. The chamber filled with a deadly dose of radiation that would kill most species instantly. The monitors showed something impossible. All 4 test subjects were adapting in real time, their bodies creating new defenses they had never possessed before. "Look at this." Wells pointed to the data streams. "Their DNA isn't just mutating, it's rewriting itself completely. But that's not supposed to be possible in a single generation." The smoke dancer, whose body looked like swirling dark mist, shifted form. "We have always known we were different. On my world, we change our entire molecular structure daily just to survive the shifting atmosphere." Blue Shell's crystalline form pulsed with excitement. Second test: gravitational pressure. The gravity in the chamber increased to crush levels. Instead of being flattened, each subject adapted differently. The human's bones instantly became denser. The Metal King's liquid form redistributed its mass. The smoke dancer compressed its gaseous body, and Blue Shell rearranged its crystal structure. "This isn't evolution," Wells muttered, staring at the readings. "This is something else entirely. It's like your bodies know exactly what changes to make, as if they're following a preset program." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed as security systems activated. "Warning: unauthorized testing detected," the facility's AI announced. "Science Council representatives approaching." "Quick!" Wells began shutting down equipment. "Everyone out through the emergency exit. Blue Shell, download all the data." But before they could finish, the laboratory doors slid open. 5 members of the Science Council entered, led by the head of the classification committee. His silver skin now showed patterns of angry red and black. "Dr. Wells," the head's voice was cold. "You were warned. This research was forbidden." Wells stood his ground. "We have a right to understand what we are. Look at the data. These adaptations aren't random mutations. They're too perfect, too quick. Someone programmed this ability into our species." The head looked at the 4 test subjects, each standing proudly despite the threat. "You don't understand the danger of what you're suggesting. If Class 13 species can adapt this quickly, if they were engineered for some greater purpose, then we need to know why." Blue Shell interrupted, its crystal form glowing brightly. "Our peoples are changing faster every day. These abilities were meant to be used." The Metal King stepped forward, its liquid metal form reflecting the emergency lights. "On my world, children are now being born with abilities their parents never had. We are evolving beyond what should be possible." The head's patterns shifted to deep blue, a sign of fear. "That's exactly what we're afraid of. The Council has received reports from all Class 13 worlds. New abilities are manifesting daily. Some can even adapt to survive in space without protection. You're becoming something beyond our understanding." Not beyond understanding, Wells argued. Beyond your control. That's what really scares you, isn't it? That we might be better equipped to face whatever's coming than you are. The tension in the room could be cut with a knife. The head looked at each of them in turn, then made a decision that would change everything. Dr. Wells, you and your colleagues will continue this research, under Council's supervision. Because if you're right about why Class 13 species were created, we need to know what we're being prepared to face. Commander Stone walked through the halls of the Galactic Defense Force headquarters, his boots making no sound on the polished floor. As Earth's military attaché, he had gotten used to the way other species watched him, with a mixture of fear and fascination. Today, those looks carried extra weight. He entered the high-security conference room, where Dr. Wells and Blue Shell were waiting. The room's walls shifted colors slowly, a security measure that prevented any type of recording device from working properly. "You got my message," Wells said, looking more worried than Stone had ever seen him. "Thank you for coming." When a civilian scientist sends a military-grade encrypted message marked extreme urgency, I pay attention. Stone sat down, noticing the holographic data floating above the table. What am I looking at? Blue Shell's crystal form dimmed slightly. Weapon designs. The Galactic Defense Force has been secretly studying Class 13 species. They're trying to weaponize our adaptive abilities. Stone leaned forward, examining the designs. They showed chambers similar to the ones used in Wells' experiments, but these were clearly meant for military purposes. How did you get these? The Science Council's supervision of our research isn't just about understanding us, Wells explained. They're feeding everything we learn directly to the military. The hologram changed to show training facilities being built on remote planets. Stone recognized the design. They were combat-proving grounds. They're planning to create specialized combat units, Blue Shell continued, teams made up entirely of Class 13 species. They believe our adaptive abilities make us the perfect soldiers. Imagine. Troops that can survive any environment, heal from almost any wound, and evolve new defenses against any weapon. Stone's jaw tightened. They can't do this without approval from our governments. It violates at least 6 different galactic treaties. They're not asking for approval, Wells said quietly. They're doing it anyway. We've detected ships approaching all 4 Class 13 worlds. They're planning to start recruiting, or conscripting, within days. Stone stood up and paced the room. His military training told him the strategic value of such forces, but his conscience screamed that this was wrong. Why now? What's making them rush into this? Fear. Blue Shell's crystal body pulsed with concern. Our latest research shows that Class 13 species are approaching some kind of evolutionary tipping point. New abilities are emerging faster than ever. Some children can now communicate telepathically. Others can manipulate energy directly. The military wants to harness these abilities before they fully develop. But they don't understand what they're dealing with. Wells added, "These abilities, they're not random. They're following a pattern, like our bodies are reading from an instruction manual that was written millions of years ago. If they try to weaponize this process, they could trigger something we're not ready for." Stone finished. He had seen enough combat to know how plans like this usually ended. "What do you need from me?" "Protection," Wells said. "And access. We need to warn our worlds, but we also need to continue our research. Something created our species to be this way, and I think the military's interference might activate processes that were meant to stay dormant until the right time." Stone looked at the weapon designs again. As a military officer, he should report this to his superiors. As a human from a Class 13 world, he knew he had to protect his people and the other Class 13 species from being turned into weapons. "All right," he said finally. "I'll help, but we do this my way. No more unauthorized experiments. No more secret meetings. We need to be smart about this." Blue Shell's crystal form brightened. "Time is short. The military will not wait, and the changes in our people are accelerating. Then we better work fast." Stone said, his military training already forming plans. Because if the Galactic Defense Force thinks they can turn us into their private army, they're about to learn why Class 13 species are truly dangerous. We don't just adapt to survive, we adapt to win. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in an abandoned mining tunnel that had been converted into a makeshift research site, Dr. Wells studied the wall of symbols before him. Blue Shell stood nearby, crystal body glowing softly to provide light, while Commander Stone kept watch at the entrance. These markings, Wells said, running his hand over the geometric patterns carved into the rock, they're identical to the ones found on Crystal Prime. They're not random, they're a language. Blue Shell moved closer, its crystalline structure resonating with the ancient patterns. Look at the dating results from the rock samples. These markings are over 50 million years old. Stone walked over, his military training making him constantly aware of their surroundings. So someone was here long before humans evolved. But why leave these messages buried so deep? Because they weren't messages, Wells said excitedly. They're instructions, part of a program written into the planet itself. He pulled out a device that projected a 3D map of Earth's core. We found similar patterns at every major tectonic boundary. The ancient builders, the shapers, they didn't just make Earth harsh. They made it into a machine. Blue Shell's form pulsed with blue light. The same is true of Crystal Prime. The patterns form a network, like a giant computer built into the planet's crust. It's been running a program for millions of years, guiding evolution itself. Stone frowned. You're saying these shapers turned entire planets into computers. For what purpose? Before anyone could answer, Wells' scanning device began beeping rapidly. New data scrolled across its screen, causing his eyes to widen. The patterns, they're active. They're responding to our presence. The geometric markings on the wall began to glow with a faint blue light. Blue Shell moved forward, its crystalline body resonating at the same frequency as the glowing symbols. I can read them, Blue Shell said, its voice filled with awe. The patterns match the basic structure of my crystalline matrix. These aren't just instructions, they're memories. Images suddenly projected from the glowing wall, filling the cave with holographic scenes from ancient times. They watched in amazement as the story of the shapers unfolded before them. They were the first advanced species in our galaxy. Blue Shell translated, its crystal body pulsing in sync with the ancient projections. They had mastered the art of planetary engineering, but they saw something coming, a threat so great it would destroy everything. The images showed massive dark shapes moving between stars, consuming entire solar systems. Wells felt a chill run down his spine as he watched. The shapers knew they couldn't fight this threat directly. Blue Shell continued. So they created the Class 13 worlds as evolutionary forges. Each world was designed to produce species that could adapt to anything. But they didn't just want survivors, they wanted warriors. Stone stepped closer to the wall. That's why the military's interest is triggering new abilities. The shapers built in responses to combat training. Yes, Wells said, checking his readings. But it's more than that. Look at these genetic sequences. The shapers didn't just guide our evolution. They built in capabilities that would only activate when we reached a certain level of development. Everything we're seeing now, the telepathy, the energy manipulation, the rapid adaptation, it's all part of their plan. The projections suddenly shifted, showing star maps and trajectories. Blue Shell's crystal form dimmed slightly. No, this can't be right. According to these calculations. What is it? Stone demanded. The threat the shapers foresaw. Blue Shell's voice was barely a whisper. It's not just coming. It's almost here. We're not activating ahead of schedule. We're barely awakening in time. Wells looked at the star maps, his face pale. How long? Months, maybe weeks. Blue Shell's translation crystal trembled. The shapers built us to be the galaxy's last line of defense, and now we know why they made us so powerful. Because what's coming? It's worse than anything we imagined. Stone's military mind was already racing with possibilities. Then we need to move fast. The Galactic Defense Force, the Science Council, they need to know the truth. Class 13 species aren't a threat to the galaxy. We're its only hope for survival. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was chaos. Representatives from 100 species shouted and argued as Dr. Wells, Commander Stone, and Blue Shell stood at the center of the massive chamber. The evidence they had presented, the Shaper's message, the approaching threat, and the true purpose of Class 13 worlds had thrown the galaxy's political structure into turmoil. "This is madness," shouted the representative from the Energy Collective, their form crackling with agitation. "We cannot trust the Class 13 species with such power. They must be contained." Contained. Commander Stone stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. "While you debate, more of our people are awakening. Just yesterday, a group of children on Earth lifted a crashed shuttle without touching it. On Crystal Prime, they're developing abilities to see through time itself." The chamber erupted again, but this time Blue Shell's crystal form pulsed with brilliant light, demanding attention. "You fear what we are becoming, but you should fear more what's coming. The Shapers didn't create us to be contained. They created us to fight." Suddenly, the chamber's main display lit up with urgent messages from across the galaxy. Reports were flooding in from all 4 Class 13 worlds. The changes were accelerating. Dr. Wells read the reports aloud. Metal Kings developing the ability to transform into living spacecraft. Smoke dancers learning to exist in multiple places at once. Humans and crystal beings merging consciousness to share knowledge instantly. He looked up at the council. This is just the beginning. The head of the Science Council, his silver skin now showing patterns of deep purple, spoke quietly. "The military's tests have triggered a cascade effect. The defensive programs built into Class 13 species are activating faster than predicted. We can't stop it now." "We shouldn't stop it," Stone argued. "These abilities are our best chance at survival." The Shapers knew what they were doing. A new alert flashed across the displays. Long-range sensors had detected something massive moving at the edge of charted space, something that matched the Shapers' ancient warnings. The council chamber fell silent. "How long?" asked the Energy Collective representative, their voice now subdued. "Days," Blue Shell answered, its crystal structure vibrating with tension. "Maybe less. But we're not ready. These new abilities, we barely understand them. We need time to learn, to train." "Time is the one thing we don't have," Wells said grimly. He activated a portable hologram showing the latest data from Earth. "The Shapers left us one last gift. In the deepest chamber, where we found their messages, there's a device. We think it can accelerate our development." Stone turned sharply. "You never mentioned this." "Because it's dangerous," Wells explained. "The device could unlock our full potential immediately, but the strain might kill anyone who uses it. The Shapers left warnings. It was meant to be a last resort." Blue Shell moved closer to the hologram. "My people found something similar on Crystal Prime. We've been afraid to use it." The head of the military council, who had been silent until now, stood up. "You're telling us that you have weapons of the Shapers, devices that could give you even more power, and you want us to trust you with them." "Trust." Stone laughed without humor. "This isn't about trust. This is about survival. In a few days, something is going to arrive that the most advanced species this galaxy has ever known was afraid of. They spent millions of years preparing us to fight it. So you don't have to trust us. You just have to ask yourself one question. What other choice do you have?" The chamber erupted in arguments again, but Wells wasn't listening anymore. He was watching the data streams from Earth, showing more and more of his people developing abilities that should have been impossible. The Shapers program was working exactly as designed, pushing them toward their final form. But as he looked at the long-range sensor data, at the darkness approaching their galaxy, he wondered if even the Shapers' ultimate weapons, The Class 13 species themselves would be enough to face what was coming. The ancient chamber deep beneath Earth's surface hummed with energy. Dr. Wells, Commander Stone, and Blue Shell stood before the Shaper's device, a crystalline structure that pulsed with swirling colors. Similar scenes were playing out on all 4 Class 13 worlds as their chosen representatives prepared to take the final step. The enemy fleet will arrive in 6 hours, Stone reported, checking the latest military data. Our conventional defenses won't even slow them down. Wells looked at the device, its light reflecting in his tired eyes. The Shapers left notes about this moment. They called it the ultimate evolution. Once activated, there's no going back. Blue Shell's crystal form resonated with the device. All 4 worlds are ready. The Metal Kings and Smoke Dancers are in position at their devices. We do this together, or not at all. The chamber's communications array crackled to life, showing holograms from the other Class 13 worlds. The Metal King's liquid metal form shifted nervously, while the Smoke Dancer's misty body swirled with anticipation. The Galactic Council has evacuated the nearby systems, Stone said. They're either expecting us to fail spectacularly or succeed in a way that scares them even more than the enemy. They're right to be scared. Wells smiled grimly. The Shapers didn't just make us strong. They made us their successors. Everything they knew, everything they could do. It's all encoded in these devices, waiting to be unlocked. Blue Shell moved to its position. My readings show the enemy fleet has accelerated. We have less time than we thought. We must act now. Wells took his place before the device, as did the representatives on the other worlds. Stone stood back, ready to coordinate with the galaxy's remaining defense forces. Remember, Wells said to all of them, the Shapers believe that life should adapt and grow. They chose our worlds, shaped our evolution, all to create species that could face this moment. Whatever happens, we proved them right today. The 4 representatives reached out to their devices simultaneously. The moment they made contact, energy surged through the ancient machines. The chamber filled with blinding light as millions of years of planned evolution activated at once. Wells felt his consciousness expanding, connecting with minds across space. He could feel the Metal Kings transforming into living starships, the Smoke Dancers spreading their awareness through the fabric of space-time, and the crystal beings becoming living computers that could process reality itself. His own body changed, becoming something the Shapers had designed but never seen, a bridge between all Class 13 species, able to understand and use all their abilities. Through their merged consciousness, they saw the enemy clearly for the first time. Living voids that consumed light, life, and even time itself. The threat the Shapers had feared was a species that evolved to unmake reality. Now we know. Blue Shell's thoughts echoed through their shared awareness. The Shapers didn't make us to be warriors. They made us to be guardians. The enemy fleet emerged from deep space, their void ships darkening the stars. But now the Class 13 species were ready. Metal Kings transformed into impossible geometries that could fight in dimensions the enemy didn't know existed. Smoke Dancers wrapped time itself around the void ships, trapping them in moments stretched to eternity. Crystal beings projected fields of pure logic that forced reality to remain stable despite the enemy's attempts to unmake it. And humanity, led by Wells, wove it all together, their adaptability letting them coordinate the powers of all Class 13 species into a single, unstoppable force. The battle that followed would be written into the memory of every species in the galaxy. They watched as the Class 13 worlds proved why the Shapers had chosen them, why evolution in the harshest conditions had created something beautiful rather than monstrous. When it was over, when the enemy fled back into the darkness between galaxies, the truth about Class 13 worlds was finally clear to everyone. They weren't Deathworlds at all. They were birthplaces, cradles where the next guardians of life itself had been born and raised, not by chance, but by design. Stone watched as the transformed Class 13 representatives began teaching others to use their new abilities. So what happens now? he asked. Wells, his consciousness still connected to the others, smiled. Now we do what the Shapers intended. We protect, we teach, and we prepare. Because somewhere out there, right now, another Class 13 world is forming. Another species is taking its first steps toward joining us. The Shapers may be gone, but their work continues through us. And that, Blue Shell added, its crystal form now shimmering with impossible colors, is the truth that terrified everyone all along. We weren't meant to be contained by evolution. We were meant to guide it.